The night of March 8, 2014, began like any other for the families and friends of the 239 souls on board Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. They kissed their loved ones goodbye at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, expecting to see them in Beijing just a few hours later. The aircraft, a state-of-the-art Boeing 777-200ER, was a marvel of modern engineering, a machine so reliable it was almost boring. But as the plane climbed into the darkness and pointed its nose toward the South China Sea, it flew into a mystery that would consume the world for over a decade. No distress call, no warning, just a silent void where a jumbo jet full of people used to be. The official investigation, costing over $200 million and covering an area of the Indian Ocean the size of France, became the most expensive and futile search in aviation history. They scanned underwater mountains, mapped volcanic plains, and found nothing. Not a single screw from the main wreckage. The world was left with more questions than answers, a vacuum quickly filled by conspiracy theories. Did a rogue pilot dive the plane into the ocean? Was it hijacked and landed somewhere remote? Did the Russians shoot it down? It was a puzzle with missing pieces, and it seemed those pieces would be lost forever. Enter Richard Godfrey. He is not a spy, a deep-sea salvage expert, or a government investigator. He is a retired British aerospace engineer, a man who spent his career solving complex problems with physics and mathematics. While the world moved on, Godfrey became obsessed with a single, defiant question. What if the proof wasn't on the ocean floor, but in the air around us the whole time? What if the plane left an invisible trail that everyone was too blind to see? To understand his revolutionary claim, we must go back to the bare facts of that night. After the plane's transponder was deliberately switched off at 1:21 a.m., it became a ghost on civilian radar. But the Malaysian military tracked it on primary radar as it made a sharp, deliberate turn back across the Malay Peninsula and headed out into the Strait of Malacca. It then flew northwest before vanishing from military radar as well. The only link to the outside world was a series of automated, hourly handshakes with an Inmarsat satellite. These pings weren't meant to track the plane. They were just digital hellos to confirm the satellite terminal was still working. Using the Doppler shift and the timing of those pings, analysts at Inmarsat and the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AIB, were able to draw two possible flight corridors, a northern arc stretching over Asia and a southern arc plunging into the remote Indian Ocean. The northern arc was quickly dismissed due to the sheer number of radars it would have had to evade. All eyes turned south. The plane, they concluded, must have flown on autopilot for hours until it ran out of fuel and crashed somewhere along that southern arc. This became the official theory and the basis for the failed search. But Godfrey, looking at the same data, saw a problem. The Inmarsat data was too vague. It gave a line, not a point. The search area was the length of a coastline, not a specific crash site. He knew that to find the plane, you needed a second, independent source of data. And that's when he stumbled upon a global network of invisible tripwires. His tool was a forgotten piece of internet history, WHISPER, which stands for Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. Invented by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Joe Taylor, WHISPER is a network of thousands of amateur radio operators around the world. These ham radio enthusiasts transmit very low-power signals, often less than a single watt, that bounce off the ionosphere and can be received thousands of miles away. They do this just to study how radio waves travel. The entire network is logged on a public database, a massive, time-stamped record of millions of signals crisscrossing the globe. Godfrey had a stunning realization. If a massive object like a Boeing 777 flew through one of these signals, it would disturb it. The plane's metal body would block, reflect, and refract the wave, creating a tiny, measurable blip in the data, a momentary shadow. For years, this data had been sitting there, a silent witness to the passage of MH370, waiting for someone to look. It was the ultimate cold case file, written in radio waves. For over 3 years, Godfrey dedicated himself to building the software to analyze this data. He had to filter out interference from solar flares, weather patterns, and other aircraft. He cross-referenced the disturbances with flight logs of every commercial plane in the region to eliminate false positives. It was a monumental task of data science. Then, slowly, a pattern began to emerge. He found not just a few disturbances, but over 130 of them, all occurring on the night of March 8, 2014. We plotted them on a map. They didn't look random. They formed a precise, continuous flight path. It started at the last known military radar point and then curved gracefully to the southwest before making a final turn south, following the exact route predicted by the official analysis, but with breathtaking precision. The Inmarsat data gave a corridor hundreds of miles wide. The whispered data narrowed it down to a corridor just a few miles wide. The trail of radio shadows led to one final, devastating point. On June 1, 2021, Richard Godfrey published his findings, presenting the world with a specific set of coordinates for the wreckage of MH370, 29.178 degrees south, 99.831 degrees east. This location lies deep within the southeast Indian Ocean, approximately 2,000 kilometers west of Perth, Australia. It was a spot that fell just outside the priority zone of the original search, a tantalizingly close miss. When he announced his discovery, the global aviation community was stunned. He hadn't just proposed a theory, he had provided a map. The skepticism was immediate and fierce. Critics pointed out that Whisper was never designed for tracking. They argued that the signals were too weak to be reliable. In response, Godfrey and a team from the University of Liverpool conducted a validation test that was as brilliant as it was simple. They flew a Boeing 777 along the suspected flight path while monitoring the Whisper network. The results were unequivocal. The aircraft created the exact same type of disturbances Godfrey had identified. The theory moved from compelling to scientifically validated. But the most powerful corroboration came from the debris itself. Over the years, more than 30 pieces of confirmed or highly suspected MH370 wreckage have washed up on coastlines of Africa and islands in the Indian Ocean. Oceanographers at the GMR Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research in Germany performed drift analysis on this debris. They ran millions of computer simulations, releasing virtual particles into the ocean currents and watching where they would go. The result? The particles consistently traced back to an origin point within 100 kilometers of Richard Godfrey's Whisper coordinates. The ocean itself was confirming what the radio waves had already said. So what happened to MH370? According to the path Godfrey has mapped, the plane didn't just run out of fuel and glide gently into the water. The Whisper data suggests a high-speed, controlled descent in its final moments. This supports the theory that the plane was not on autopilot, but was being actively flown until the end. It paints a picture of the aircraft plunging into the ocean at a steep angle, explaining why the main wreckage field is so concentrated and why so few large pieces have floated away. The debris that did escape, like the famous flaperon found on Reunion Island, were torn from the aircraft on impact, setting them adrift on the currents that would eventually scatter them across the African coast. Richard Godfrey's work has not just provided a new theory, it has shifted the paradigm. He has demonstrated that the technology to solve the mystery was in the public domain all along, hiding in plain sight. His proof is a powerful combination of radio physics, data science, and oceanography. It has convinced a new generation of searchers that the waiting game is over. The result? A deep-sea exploration company, Ocean Infinity, has taken notice. They have announced a new no-find, no-fee search, ready to deploy their fleet of advanced autonomous underwater vehicles to the exact coordinates provided by Godfrey. For the first time in nearly a decade, there is a genuine, data-driven hope that the wreckage will be found. The world is watching, and the families of the 239 passengers and crew are holding their breath. Richard Godfrey claims he has found where MH370 really is. He brought proof that has left the world stunned. And very soon, we may finally have the answer to the question that has haunted us for 10 years. What really happened to Flight 370?